I told them, I mean, you got to stop these fires from coming in and, poisoning our air. Our air has been poisoned. I have a good relationship with Mark Carney, but, we got to stop the fires up there. If we can help them, we'll help them. But maybe they should pay us some damages or something, or we should do some tariffs. But it was terrible. I mean, you had businesses closing. In particular, Michigan. If you look at Detroit, Michigan area, they had to close everything. They had to close car plants.
Pay us some damages. That is what Donald Trump just said about Canada. Not about a country that attacked America. Not about a hostile foreign power. About Canada. Your country. The country that has stood beside the United States through every war, every crisis, and every natural disaster for over 100 years. Pay us some damages for wildfires, and then within the same few hours his administration signed an executive order imposing a brand new 50% tariff on Canadian goods, dairy, alcohol, cement, a long list of products made by Canadian workers who have done absolutely nothing wrong. 2 hits in one day. Damages, threats, and new tariffs. Simultaneously. Your generation has seen a lot from Washington over the decades. You lived through trade disputes and diplomatic tensions and difficult negotiations. But what is happening right now between this administration and Canada is something different. Something that deserves to be called exactly what it is, a sustained assault on a neighbor that has never been anything but a loyal friend. Subscribe to Canada Point right now because tonight we are breaking down both developments and what they mean for every Canadian family. Let us start with the damages comment because it is important that every Canadian understands exactly what Trump said and why it is so deeply wrong. Trump claims Canadian wildfires are poisoning American air, that Detroit businesses had to close because of smoke crossing the border, and that Canada should either pay damages or face tariffs as compensation. Here is what that argument deliberately ignores. Canada did not cause these wildfires. Rising global temperatures caused them. The same rising temperatures that are driving unprecedented wildfires across California, Texas, and a dozen other American states simultaneously this summer. While Trump was demanding Canada pay damages for smoke, American wildfires had already consumed over 1 million hectares of American territory this same season. American smoke. American fires, American communities evacuating. Trump did not demand American states pay damages to each other. And here is the fact that should make every Canadian who lived through the post-war decades feel the specific sting of ingratitude. Canada has repeatedly sent water bombers and firefighting personnel south to help fight American wildfires. A Canadian pilot from British Columbia gave his life fighting fires in Colorado just weeks ago, dying on American soil to protect American communities. Trump's response to that sacrifice is a damages demand and new tariffs.
Good evening. We begin tonight with breaking news. U.S. President Donald Trump is escalating the trade war, signing an executive order to impose a new 50% tariff on some Canadian goods. This all happened in just the last hour. CTV's Austin Lee joins us live now with the details on this, Austin.
Patricia, according to Trump administration officials, this latest round of tariffs is in response to what the White House is calling discriminatory trade policies, with the levies set to come into effect on August 19th. The American officials pointing to provincial bans on American alcohol, supply management on dairy products, and quotas on American cars coming into Canada. As for the reasons for the latest tariffs, those are the reasons they gave. Now, the new duties hitting things like Canadian dairy, a long list of alcohol products, cement, and many more other goods. Those same American officials say Trump is using part of the Tariff Act of 1930.
The Tariff Act of 1930. Think about that for a moment. The year is 2026, and the United States government is using Depression-era legislation to impose a 50% tariff on Canadian dairy products and alcohol. Legislation written when Canada and the United States were still figuring out what their modern relationship would look like. Before the Second World War. Before the Cold War alliance. Before NORAD. Before NAFTA. Before decades of integrated supply chains that made North America the most competitive economic region on Earth. Trump is reaching back nearly a century to find a legal instrument sharp enough to use against Canada. And the justification his officials gave? Provincial bans on American alcohol, supply management on dairy, quotas on American cars. These are not new policies. They are long-standing Canadian regulatory frameworks that have existed for decades, that were in place when Trump signed USMCA and called it the greatest trade deal ever negotiated, that were accepted by American administrations of both parties for generations. Nothing changed in Canada. What changed is that Trump decided to manufacture a grievance and then found a law old enough to act on it. And here is the detail that tells you everything about what this tariff is actually designed to do. The new 50% tariff does not apply to energy. It does not apply to critical minerals. It does not apply to potash or fish. In other words, it exempts the things America desperately needs from Canada and targets the things Canadian farmers and food producers depend on. It is not a trade policy. It is a pressure campaign designed to hurt specific Canadian industries and specific Canadian communities while protecting American access to Canadian resources that Washington cannot easily replace. Your generation understands what this means. You have seen this kind of economic pressure applied before, not by allies, by adversaries.
Now, the new duties hitting things like Canadian dairy, a long list of alcohol products, cement, and many more other goods. Those same American officials say Trump is using part of the Tariff Act of 1930, which empowers the president to impose tariffs of up to 50% on countries that discriminate against U.S. commerce. Now, those tariffs will not apply to energy, some potash products, and some other goods such as fish and critical minerals.
Now step back and look at what happened today as a whole, because the combination of these two developments in a single day is not coincidental. First, Trump appears on Fox News talking about wildfires and damages, keeping the emotional temperature high, giving his base a villain to be angry at, creating the narrative that Canada is somehow responsible for American suffering. Then within hours, his administration announces a new 50% tariff, the emotional narrative and the economic weapon arriving together, designed to make Canadians feel simultaneously blamed and punished. This is a coordinated pressure strategy, not a reaction to genuine grievances, not a response to any change in Canadian policy. A deliberate escalation designed to see whether Ottawa will finally break under the weight of relentless pressure. The answer from every Canadian leader who has faced this over the past year has been the same. Canada does not break. Canada builds. And for your generation, the generation that built this country through challenges far greater than tariff disputes, that answer should feel familiar. Because you have always known that standing firm is not stubbornness, it is character. There is something specific that Canadians of your generation feel when you hear Trump demand damages for wildfire smoke. It is not fear. You have seen too much to be afraid of a Truth Social post. It is not surprise. You have watched this administration escalate and threaten and pressure for long enough that nothing it does is surprising anymore. What you feel is something older and more personal than politics. It is the specific disappointment of someone who has been a genuinely good friend being treated as an adversary by a neighbor who forgot what friendship actually looks like. Your generation sent sons and daughters to stand beside Americans in Korea. You opened your homes to American passengers stranded by terrorism in 2001. You sent firefighters south every single summer when California burned. You built an integrated economy that made both countries richer than either could have been alone. And today, the President of the United States appeared on Fox News and suggested you should pay damages for smoke. That is not a trade dispute. That is a statement about values, about gratitude, about what kind of partner America has chosen to become under this leadership. Canada's government has not yet responded to tonight's tariff announcement as of this broadcast. The Prime Minister's office and Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc's office were both contacted by CTV and had not replied. That silence is not weakness. It is deliberate, because Carney has learned something important about dealing with this White House. Reacting quickly to every escalation gives Trump exactly what he wants: a news cycle dominated by Canadian anxiety and American dominance. Canada's response when it comes will be measured, strategic, focused on Canadian interests rather than Trump's headlines. That is how you deal with an opponent who thrives on chaos. You do not join the chaos. You absorb it, you plan, and you respond on your terms, not theirs. Your generation built this country with exactly that kind of patience and resolve. through recessions and energy crises and trade disputes that felt insurmountable at the time. Canada is still here, still standing, still building, and whatever the Prime Minister's office says, when it finally responds tonight, it will be backed by something Trump's tariffs and damages demands can never touch. 80 years of being the neighbor who always showed up. That is Canada's real answer to today's escalation. And no Tariff Act from 1930 changes it. Subscribe to Canada Point for honest, timely analysis of the trade battle shaping every Canadian family's future. Turn on notifications so you never miss a development, and we will see you in the next one.